My supervisor rewrote my review to say I was insubordinate after I called out a safety violation. That night, I printed the inspection photos and mailed them anonymously to OSHA. 2 weeks later, the site was shut down and they lost their bonus. I got a call from corporate. I answered with one word: good. After OSHA shut down part of the site, things didn't calm down, they got worse. Vince didn't yell at me or confront me directly. He just made sure my life got harder in quiet, steady ways. Suddenly, I wasn't invited to meetings I used to be part of. I'd walk into the conference trailer and find out they already made safety decisions without me. Site plans would change, and I wouldn't be told. One time I walked onto the south end of the build and saw scaffolding going up that hadn't been cleared. No fall protection nets, nothing. When I asked about it, the crew shrugged and said Vince told them to keep moving. I tried to document it, but it started to wear me down. I was waking up with stomach pain every morning, checking over my shoulder during every walkthrough. I'd email HR when the violations were serious, but nothing changed. They either ignored it or said, "We'll monitor the situation." It was clear to me Vince had friends higher up. I started to feel boxed in. Then came the rumor. One of the union guys I trusted pulled me aside during break and said he'd overheard Vince talking in the site trailer. Vince told one of the PMs that I was probably the rat who called OSHA. He said I was out for blood and that I was unstable. The next day, a different guy on the crew wouldn't make eye contact with me. Then another. Then more. People started avoiding me. One guy even refused to sign his daily safety check sheet, saying he didn't want to be part of my paper trail. I realized Vince was turning people against me one by one, making it look like I was trying to get them all in trouble. It worked. I felt isolated. One afternoon, I went into the job trailer and found my desk had been moved. No one told me. All my stuff, my reports, my clipboard, my gear, had been shoved into a box and set in the corner. They gave my desk to a junior field engineer who hadn't even passed his safety cert yet. When I asked why, Vince just said, "New layout. Corporate wants more efficiency." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I started keeping a separate log at home. Dates, names, quotes. I recorded the dates I was excluded from meetings, the times I was overridden, the growing list of safety violations. I wasn't sure what I was building. I just knew I needed to protect myself. Then, 3 weeks after the OSHA visit, I noticed something even worse. They were falsifying the safety records. I checked the site logs and saw that someone had filled out confined space entry forms for the same week OSHA came, dated and signed. The air test results, the rescue plan boxes, everything, perfectly filled out, backdated. It wasn't my handwriting and it wasn't real. Someone was covering their tracks. I took pictures. I printed copies. I put them in the same folder I'd started with the first incident. I was scared now, not just for myself, but because I realized this company wasn't going to change. They weren't just ignoring danger. They were faking safety to keep the project alive. And I knew this time I couldn't send the evidence anonymously. I decided to hold off sending anything for now. I needed to know who was forging the records. If I sent them to OSHA again without proof of who signed them, they'd just find the company and move on. Vince would survive, maybe even get promoted for handling the fallout. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I waited. I watched. There was a new intern rotating through different departments. Quiet kid named Martin. Polite, green, barely knew how to wear his vest right. One morning, I caught him inside the trailer by the filing cabinet alone. I didn't think much of it until I noticed he had one of the safety binders open, the same binder where the forged entries had appeared. He saw me and closed it fast. I waited a few days, then casually brought it up while we were both walking the site. I asked him what he thought about the safety paperwork. He got nervous, real nervous. Eventually, he let it slip. Vince had been asking him to fill out old forms to clean up the files. Said it was part of a compliance sweep. Told him it was standard practice. Martin had no idea what he was doing was illegal. He thought he was just helping organize documents. I asked him if he kept copies. He did. I asked him if Vince ever signed anything himself. He had. One of the logs had Vince's initials. I told Martin to hang onto everything and not tell anyone we talked. That night, I went home, added all of it to the folder. Then I made a digital backup and emailed it to myself and a private Gmail I kept. I had everything now: dates, forged files, photos, names. I still wasn't sure what to do. Then, a week later, my badge stopped working. I showed up early Monday, and the gate wouldn't let me in. I thought maybe it was a glitch, but then my phone rang. It was HR. They told me I was being suspended pending investigation. They didn't say why. No written notice. No meeting. Just a phone call. When I asked for a reason, they said, "We're looking into reports of hostile behavior and disruption of the work environment." I sat in my car for a long time. That's when I realized Vince was making his final move. He wasn't just trying to shut me out. He was trying to erase me. But I had one thing he didn't know about Martin. I texted him. No reply. I waited 2 days. Still nothing. Then I got a block call. It was Martin. He sounded shaky. Said Vince found out he'd been talking to me, that someone from the PM office had pulled him into a meeting and warned him to be careful who he aligned with. They didn't say my name, but it was clear. He was being watched now, too. And then he said something I didn't expect. "There's something else you should see. It's not just the safety logs." He offered to meet me in person. Not at the site. Somewhere quiet. We agreed to meet at a library parking lot after hours. What he gave me changed everything. It wasn't just forged safety records. It was emails. Internal emails between Vince and the senior project manager, dated months before OSHA came. They were talking about managing perception, reducing the paper trail, and retraining the safety coordinator if necessary. That was me. They were plotting to discredit me before I ever said a word. One email even mentioned pushing me out before year-end reviews to prevent complications. They had planned the entire thing. The fake performance review, the forged logs, the smear campaign. It was never about safety. It was about control. And now, I finally had the whole story. I sat in my car outside that library for a long time after Martin left. I read the emails again, over and over. They weren't careful with their words. Vince and the senior PM, his name was Darren, spoke like guys who had done this before. There was a chain about neutralizing future risk by documenting behavioral problems early. Another one talked about making sure I was boxed out of the leadership circle so they could restructure the role to someone more aligned with production goals. They were trying to erase me before I ever caused a problem, not because I was bad at my job, but because I took it seriously. I thought about quitting, walking away, starting over somewhere else. But then I thought about the guy who threw up outside the tank. I thought about how easily he could have died, and about how someone like Vince would have buried the story and blamed the worker for not speaking up. So I got a lawyer. I didn't want a lawsuit. Not yet. I wanted protection. I brought her everything: emails, photos, forged logs, dates, names, Martin's testimony. She read through it quietly, then looked up and said, "They're going to try to discredit you even harder when this surfaces." I said I didn't care. She helped me write a protected whistleblower disclosure, sent it directly to OSHA and the Department of Labor under my real name. I attached every single file. I also CC'd it to the company's own compliance division and copied their external legal counsel. I knew it would start a war, but I wasn't going to hide anymore. Then I went silent. Didn't answer calls. Didn't respond to emails. Just waited. The silence only lasted a few days. On the 4th morning, I got a visit. It wasn't from OSHA. It was from someone I hadn't seen before, a guy in a clean truck with out-of-state plates. Said he was from corporate legal. Showed up at my house. He didn't threaten me. He smiled the whole time. Said they were interested in resolving this internally. Asked if I would be willing to sign a severance agreement and move on. He slid a folder across my table. Inside was a check. It was a lot. Not life-changing, but more than I'd seen at once in my life. but it came with strings. A full NDA. No talking to media. No talking to OSHA. No legal action. I asked him if this came from Vince. He didn't answer. I asked him if Vince would still have his job. Still didn't answer. I told him I'd think about it. When he left, I called my lawyer. She looked through the documents and said what I already knew. They were scared. This wasn't just about a safety report anymore. It was about a cover-up, a big one, with names, signatures, and company policy failures. By then, I had started hearing rumors from the site, too. Not everyone had turned on me. One of the assistant PMs, Jorge, called me from his personal phone. Said the office was in chaos. Corporate had frozen all personnel changes. Vince was not taking meetings. A second OSHA inspection was on the way. And that's when Jorge told me the worst part. They were trying to blame Martin. Vince had told HR that the intern acted alone and fabricated forms without instruction. They were throwing him under the bus fast, trying to cut off the trail before it reached upper management. Jorge said Martin had been locked out of the system and sent home. That was the final line for me. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to bury them. I didn't sign the NDA. I told my lawyer to reject the offer and send a response. We'll let the regulators finish their review. Then I made one last call to Martin. He didn't answer at first, but he called me back later that night. He was shaken up. He said they accused him of overstepping boundaries and tampering with company records. They never said he was fired, just that his internship was ending early. I told him everything I had, that I submitted the full report, that I named names, that I included every file, every photo, every email, even the ones he gave me. I asked him if he wanted to add a statement. He said yes. 2 days later, OSHA came back to the site, but this time they brought federal investigators. The site was shut down again, not just for safety, for document fraud, whistleblower retaliation, and active obstruction. A week later, Vince was gone. He didn't get fired quietly either. Word spread fast. He was escorted out by security in front of the whole project crew. A few people clapped. Some laughed. Someone got it on video, and it leaked to a private Facebook group for regional construction workers. Turns out Vince had done this before. At another company. He'd gotten away with it because no one ever pushed back far enough. This time he didn't walk. He lost his certifications. Blacklisted from government projects. He tried to freelance as a private consultant, but too many people knew the story now. His name came up in a public OSHA report that got shared all over LinkedIn. I didn't post it, but I didn't have to. The senior PM, Darren, he tried to blame Vince for everything. Said he wasn't aware of the emails, but the trail was too clear. His name was all over the chain. I heard he was let go 2 months later, right before the bonuses would have hit. No references, no package. Martin didn't go back to that internship, but he ended up okay. My lawyer helped connect him with a nonprofit that advocates for young workers in the trades. They offered him a new internship with people who actually gave a damn. Last I heard, he's back in school, finishing his safety certs. I keep in touch with him now and then. He still sounds nervous sometimes, but he stood up when it mattered. That kid saved lives. The company itself didn't collapse, but they were hit hard. Fines in the 6 figures. 2 major clients walked away. One of the projects was canceled completely, and the other got handed over to a different GC. I found out later that corporate's entire legal department was audited after someone internally leaked the severance offer I got. And me? I still have my job. Not with them. I left 6 months later. Quietly. I didn't want a big send-off. I moved to a smaller firm. Safer culture. Real safety program. It pays a little less, but I sleep better now. I work with people who want to go home at the end of the day, as much as I do. And that phone call I got from corporate, the one where I said one word and hung up, they tried to call back again. This time, I didn't answer at all. I kept the message they left, though. They said they were disappointed by the damage I caused to the company's reputation. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Because the truth is, I didn't cause the damage. They did. I just made sure someone saw it.